going on, Dallas Mavericks fans, MFFLs? Last night in Game 3 of I guess you want to say the first round of the Western Conference Series, the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks took care of business 101-90. The final score, Dallas Mavericks 101, the Los Angeles Clippers 90. Yesterday was a very important game because obviously you saw Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic being able to pull out that win in Game 2 in LA, and that was a big, I don't say a big, but a very much needed win after letting Game 1 slip away, obviously, with no Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard returning last game, and I said to myself, obviously, one of the biggest things I felt was probably going to play in the Dallas Mavericks' hands a little bit, even though national media, everybody is kind of throwing out the fact Kawhi Leonard's returning to the Clippers lineup, the rotation. Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks are going to have a little bit more to worry about. But I felt like if you watch Game 1, although the Dallas Mavericks, I'm going to say right now, that's not even being biased, I don't feel. The Dallas Mavericks should be up right now 3-0 in this series. If it wasn't for just a terrible, abysmal second quarter, but just first half overall, and then Game 1 for the Dallas Mavericks offense, the Dallas Mavericks are going to be able to control that game as well, in my personal opinion. But having Kawhi Leonard back in that rotation, what it's going to do is take away some of that free flow and some of that freedom you saw in Game 1. James Harden kind of running the show, Paul George following him up, and Zubac showing that he is a formidable center down low around the rim, at least when it comes to just simple scoring around the basket. But Kawhi Leonard, the last couple games, he did not play well by his standards. We're talking about his standards. I believe he put 17 points in 17 shots in Game 2. He's with 15 points. Last night was about 9 points. I believe about 24 to 26 minutes, something like that. It wasn't a game you saw Kawhi Leonard play his normal self, you felt like, and I felt like obviously that was going to play into the Dallas Mavericks advantage. But also looking at Kawhi Leonard going forward, he says in the post game how much he just wanted to be out there for his team. He didn't want to miss this game, so they were asking pretty much how healthy he is, and he's saying it's kind of a work in progress. Obviously, later on in this season, that's not what the Clippers want to hear. And the Dallas Mavericks, they're going to be a serious team. The number one thing that you want to do as a serious team is take advantage of all weaknesses from the opponent, even if it's due to some bang-ups and some injuries, things like that. So the Dallas Mavericks last night, again, took care of business 101-90 over the Los Angeles Clippers in Game 3. The Mavericks now lead the series 2-1. Luka Doncic, I believe, puts up 22 points, I think. And 22, it was almost a triple-double, 22, 10, and 9. And you're looking at a guy, obviously his shooting was not up to Luka Doncic's standards. I believe about 7 for 25, something of that sort. But this is the postseason. The number one thing is about getting wins. We're talking about getting victories. I don't care how they come, just make sure they happen. And Kyrie Irving, I believe is what goes maybe about 2 minutes left in the third quarter, 2 or 3 minutes left in the third quarter. Kyrie Irving has only 2 points in this game. But as in typical Kyrie Irving fashion, which I feel like obviously he should have been the Clutch Player of the Year award winner, you're looking at a guy like Kyrie Irving ends up with the 21 points in the game. That's telling you from that stretch, about 2 minutes left in the third, once again, he ends up scoring 19 points in the final that part of the third quarter to the fourth quarter. That is exactly what he was brought here for, to be a playoff performer and to just be that, the way I guess you want to say Luka Doncic kind of calls it, as if Luka says Kyrie's the Batman, he's the Robin. But we're going to call it Batman and Superman. You have two superheroes, two guys that can kind of handle their own load depending on what we need for that particular night. Obviously, like I said, and of course, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving get a lot of the credit, but who I'm going to give credit to are the other three guys in that starting rotation. Also adding a Derek Lively. I'm going to get to him real quick. But talking about a Daniel Gafford, talk about a PJ Washington, talk about a Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones Jr. I believe puts up 11 points, but if you saw the defense he was playing last night, that's what I want to make sure I get that out very quickly. Derrick Jones Jr., since being added to the rotation, the lineup as a starter consistently, he has unlocked something defensively that this Mavericks team has not seen in a long time, if ever. We're talking about just being able to have so much versatility. Daniel Gafford, this is exactly what people are talking about when we say role players a lot of times play a little bit better at home. They have that comfort, like I said, you have the same routine, your family might be here, whatever it is, you have just that familiarity with the home crowd, the arena, the way the baskets feel, all that stuff. Daniel Gafford, I believe, puts up about 8 points, 4 rebounds. He does have 3 blocks and 2 steals. So to me, if you're talking about Daniel Gafford, it's not even statistically what he's going to bring you. It's just that presence. And you saw last night, he was that guy down low, rim protection, and it was forcing the hand of the Los Angeles Clippers. You could literally see them being afraid a lot of times to come at the rim as hard as they had, especially say in Game 1. then you're watching Derek Lively off the bench. I believe he plays 15 minutes, 15 or 16 minutes. He ends up with 13 points. I think he has like 2 blocks himself. Just that presence that he was having, and Daniel Gafford, it unlocked so much for the Dallas Mavericks, because even when you're having some shooting woes on the other side sometimes, you're going to be able to say, we can still lock things down on the other side of the court. And the Dallas Mavericks have shown themselves that 2 month or 3 month stretch in the final remainder of the season was no fluke. The national media is now starting to figure out that the Dallas Mavericks are literally actually a defensive team right now. We're not talking about just kind of here and there or being spotty, because even game 1, like I said, we gave it 107 points, something like that, 107, 109. And that was all, though, due to the fact that the Mavericks were having so many shooting issues. The Clippers found some comfort in game 1, but still, the Mavericks, if they had been a little bit more engaged, that game's going to be even tighter. And that's what you kind of saw. One of the biggest things I will say, especially talking about adjustments, Jason Kidd gets a lot of flack, especially from me, talking about adjustments, not knowing when to break up momentum, call timeouts, things like that. And sometimes just sticking with the wrong guy, whether he has just familiarity or just love for the guy. We talk about Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber early on in the season before he started to improve and show himself that he is that playoff role player that we have become accustomed to Maxi Kleber being. And just hanging on to these guys so long sometimes against kind of like banging your head against a brick wall. But Jason Kidd last night, I believe Maxi Kleber plays a big 15, 16 minutes, something like that. It wasn't too crazy, but it was just being able to show he was going to ride with whatever was working. And to me, we can talk about Luka Doncic. We can talk about Kyrie Irving. But real quick, honestly, and adding in about Luka Doncic last night, although it was a shooting, I guess you want to say a very much so down shooting game based on Luka Doncic's standards, obviously. You're talking about what he did bring. What separates Luka Doncic from everybody else and from other guys outside of maybe a Jokic, outside of maybe a Giannis, when he's healthy completely, we're talking about a guy that even if he's not shooting that well, he is able to still be a controller of the game. You saw Kendrick Perkins say last night, I believe he tweets it out pretty much. It's crazy, even when you see Luka Doncic and I'm paraphrasing, even when Luka Doncic is not shooting well, he still can be the best player on the court. That's exactly how it is, because the playmaking and what he unlocks for everybody else. There were so many possessions where you saw they're doubling down on Luka Doncic as quick as they can, trying to trap and get the ball out of his hands. And what you did see was him still kind of playing around, having the Clippers defense on a string, finding open guys. The ball continued to swing around, and we found some shots. And obviously, like I said, that when the shots are not falling, the three-point shot is not falling. Luka Doncic, I believe, shoots 3 of 12, something like that. Again, not pretty. It was one of those games where you could tell Luka was trying to get himself rolling at somewhat, but at the same time, he also understands, and which I give a lot of credit for, he also understands when you're watching and you're playing with guys like Kyrie Irving, and now you have versatile guys like a PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr. You're looking at a Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, a Dante Exum. What these guys can bring off the bench. Maxi Kleber, again, I give him a little quick love, a shout out. You're going to be looking at and saying, you know what, I don't have to carry the entire load, and we can honestly find ways to get easy baskets. I mean, you saw lots of lobs last night from Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. When Dante Exum gets into the game, and he's being our third ball handler. They're able to kind of pick apart the Clippers defense and pick on guys when you have a Derek Lively and a Daniel Gafford, and they were feasting down low. This is exactly what we were expecting in game 3, or hoping for in game 3. But again, if this is going to be something the Mavericks are going to be able to stick to, then we're going to be good to go going forward, because there is nothing this team cannot do if we're completely healthy. And we do, obviously, what we're talking about healthy is in quotations, because at this point of the season, a lot of people are banged up. A lot of teams are banged up. But again, you're having to fight through it, because at the end of the day, you're looking for 16 wins in the postseason. 16 wins means you're going to be hoisting that Larry O'Brien trophy at the end of the season. So the Dallas Mavericks, we're a little bit closer. You have got to lock in. But let's talk about just some of these other guys real quick before we get out of here. Obviously, we're talking about Luka Doncic, you're talking about Kyrie Irving and what they bring. Both of them end up with 2 steals, playing the passing lanes very well. Luka Doncic, again, showing that he is if he's given effort, Luka Doncic is a very solid NBA defender. Again, I'm not calling him all NBA level defense type player at this point, at least. But Luka Doncic, if he's engaged, he is a very capable defender, and he's given a lot of people a lot of troubles, because you're able to shrink down the court when you have some rim protectors like a Daniel Gafford and a Derek Lively back there to back you up. Also throwing in the guys you have around the perimeter. But who I'm going to give player of the game personally, I'm going to give player of the game is PJ Washington. I believe he plays 34, 35 minutes, 10 points, 5 rebounds, ends up with about 3 steals and a block. But if you look at him, he's plus 23, and that was not one of those things without context. You watch PJ Washington, the defense that he played, it was ferocious, it was intense, and we're talking about whether he's on a guy like a Paul George or whether he's on a guy like a Kawhi Leonard. You see a James Harden every now and then. We're talking about maybe switches. What PJ Washington brought to this team is pretty much the belief that the Dallas Mavericks don't have to come in here and try to score 120, 130 points like we were doing early in the season. I talk about that game, Luka Doncic scored 73 points. That was a game out of necessity. It wasn't like Luka Doncic just had one of those games and it wasn't needed. We needed those points because that's when we had to completely rely on just putting the ball in the bucket and hoping that the other team fizzles out before we do. This is not what that is anymore. The Dallas Mavericks can lock down, and to me, it starts with PJ Washington. Obviously, you're looking at guys on the other side of the ball for the Clippers. You have a Russell Westbrook coming off the bench. He's a very fiery guy. He's intense. Again, I always say Russell Westbrook is the type of player you love him if he's on your team. Just that fire and intensity you know he's going to play with. But if he's not on your team, you're not going to love it. Obviously, this is one of those games, and you saw the little tussle that ends up for pursuits later on in the game where you're watching Russell Westbrook. He had kind of been chirping with Luka Doncic the entire game here and there, and I guess the dam broke at some point. And then you see PJ Washington. He has no issue. That's the biggest thing you're going to see. You go back to the days of having your superstar player and having enforcers on your team. Obviously, it's not the same NBA. We're not talking about, not seeing guys throwing punches as regularly or anything like that. So this is just one of those things where you want to be able to show one of those team morale things. I have my guys back. And PJ Washington says after the game, this is one of those things we have to protect 77 at all times. That's exactly what it's about. It's that teamwork. And Luka Doncic was loving it because now you have some dogs on your team that you know are not scared. They're not backing down from anybody. Terrence Mann gets himself involved. And obviously, this is one of the situations Russell Westbrook ends up getting himself ejected. And in condition, I'm going to say when you're watching PJ Washington, he gets himself also ejected about 6 minutes left in the game. But that's how you become a fan favorite. That's how you beloved. Especially we're talking about this is his hometown. So as I believe the story was kind of coming out. He had never even gone to a playoff game here. So this was his first experience of real playoff basketball. I believe he played in a play-in before with the Charlotte Hornets, but this is real home playoff basketball for him, and not even just being on your home team. This is his home crowd. He's from here. So we're talking about a guy that got to show himself and show that he is one of those players, and we're talking about a championship type player, championship type role player. And I feel like he still has so much to unlock in his game because even when that shot is not falling, which it was still a solid game, I believe 5 of 10 on field goals, 0 4 from 3. But those threes are going to fall here and there. We already know PJ Washington, he can get streaky on offense sometimes. But if he's going to continue to be what he is defensively, this is a guy I'm beating my chest about for all NBA defensive player next year. I'm going to start that from the game 1 next season because this is one of those guys you have got to appreciate him while you have him because every team would love to have a player like that, especially come postseason time. So as always, I appreciate you guys. The Dallas Mavericks, again, won last night, 101-90 against the Los Angeles Clippers. Game 4 will be tomorrow, 2:30 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be a little bit earlier game again. We're talking about a Sunday game. The Dallas Mavericks have got to keep this same intensity, ride this same wave of momentum. We'll see if we'll start to get some guys back here and there. Tim Hardaway Jr., I'm sure he might miss the game again due to that sprained ankle. But some of these other guys were just able to get themselves rolling. And that's going to pay major dividends if we're able to continue to ride this wave of momentum for the remainder of this series and move on to the next round. But again, you have to take it one game at a time because we do know the Clippers, they still have some formidable players. You still see a James Harden can give you something every now and then. You're seeing Paul George, although he had a terrible game last night. I believe he starts the game off so hot, and you're kind of thinking, okay, maybe this one be one of those Paul George games. But I think he ends up with 9 points, 7 points, and by 7 points, something like that. And I think Kawhi Leonard ends up with about 9 themselves. So combine those two guys that were brought here to help bring the Clippers the championship. It has not played well, and at some point, they're going to have to blow this thing up, obviously. We're looking at the situation now. The Clippers are starting to get a little long in the tooth. They're getting a little older. The Dallas Mavericks have got to take advantage of that as well. And I'm going to say last thing, before going into next game, game 4, the Dallas Mavericks, we saw exactly as Zubac has shown himself to kind of beat up a little bit on Daniel Gafford in those first couple games. Derek Lively played very well against him. Last night was a much different approach, and Daniel Gafford showed that fire. So, but one thing I'm going to say, if the Clippers are going to continue to just feed Zubac and let their offense run through him because they think that's an advantage, go ahead. We will gladly take that. That's keeping the ball out of Paul George's hands, out of James Harden's hands, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook off the bench maybe every now and then. And then when you're seeing some of these other guys, Terrence Mann, you're not allowing them to get comfortable as well. You're playing same, I guess you want to say intense defense out there on the perimeter. And like I said, that goes to a lot of credit of guys like Dante Exum and Derrick Jones Jr. as well. So the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to continue this momentum once again. But game 4 is going to be the perfect situation. The Dallas Mavericks need to go in there with the mindset that we want to make this thing 3-1, go back to LA, close this thing out, and get us some much needed rest, because you do have players like Luka Doncic dealing with a little bit of his knee issue, banging up again last night. It felt like these first few games of this series, there have been lots of bang up, especially at Luka Doncic's knee. So you want to get him healthy, keep Kyrie Irving healthy, and get some of these other guys back in the fold. But if the Mavericks are going to show that they are that team, game 4 is going to be the perfect opportunity to do that. Like I said, game will be 2:30 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, Sunday. So go ahead, Dallas Mavericks fan, lock in, because I guess this team, especially now, needs the fan base even more so, because we have higher expectations. The national media is starting to kind of ride the wave a little bit too. So, but we've been here since the day one. We've seen the ugly days, the pretty days. It is what it is. We're gonna have to continue to stick with that momentum as a fan base, as a team in general. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share, and keep passing around these videos. Like I said, but for sure, hit that thumbs up button. I appreciate you guys for all the support. Game 4 again will be tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Central Time. As always, go Mavs, and also enjoy the rest of your day.